Hey, Phyllida, welcome to the Di-scussions podcast. How you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Where are you located? Somewhere in the UK. Is it London?
No, so I'm normally based out just outside of I'm in Poole, Dorset, which is like
Yeah.
2 hours outside of London by the sea. Love being by the sea. Honestly, I can't tell you how good it is for your well-being to live somewhere with a beach.
Believe me, I know. Living in Miami, I feel very, very lucky. Believe me. So I wanted to have you on the podcast because you're all about face equality, appearance inclusion, and we talk a lot about body image on the Discussions podcast. And face equality and appearance inclusion is not really something that we touched on. And who better to talk about this than you? So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we can go into how you got into the topic of face equality.
Course, yeah. So I am an appearance activist, you might call me, or a face equality activist. So I myself have facial scarring. So I got into a car accident back in 2015. I was supposed to be traveling and volunteering in Ghana, and on the first full day there, we were traveling overnight. We got into an accident as a group of volunteers, and I came out with multiple injuries, which I can get to a wee bit later. But the most kind of obvious was that I had scarring. So my whole face got cut open. And I spent time in Ghana in hospital and time back here in the UK in hospital. I was 22 years old at the time. And all of a sudden, I was confronted in the mirror with something that I'd only ever seen as a mark of a villain, a vulnerable person, never something desirable, particularly as a woman. And I had to suddenly readjust to my sense of self. It's incredibly difficult to feel like yourself when you no longer look like yourself. Um, but it really set me out on this massive self love redefining journey. It made me understand the injustice that exists across the globe for people with appearance affecting conditions of any kind. And I've pretty much been involved in the face equality movement ever since, fueled by spite and wanting to go out there with a smile on my face and prove that scars can be beautiful and prove that we can feel confident in our bodies. Um, and I've since worked in different charities, but I'm now currently the chief exec of a charity called Face Equality International. So we build a social justice movement for people with facial differences. So that can be acquired, like mine. It can be something that someone is born with,
Mm.
can be something that comes and goes, like a skin condition, birthmarks. It's this real diverse community, but all of whom are subject to a great deal of stigma, often discrimination, human rights violations. So it's my job to position this little known equality issue, and build that critical mass behind the movement.
It's your story is just so incredible. And if you don't mind, maybe going a little bit into the details of the accident, because I know you also had spinal injuries as well. So
Yeah.
what exactly happened? And then, of course, being treated in a hospital in a foreign country. I don't even know if you had multiple family members with you. Like, how was that? It must have been a harrowing experience.
So, as I said, the accident happened on the first full day there, so I didn't actually know anybody else on the
Mm.
in the minivan that crashed. There was the driver, and then there was another guy, and then there was me on the left hand side of this minivan, and that's where the impact was. So the severity of the kind of injuries started out with the driver, who was worse off. He had brain damage, then another guy who had broken bones, and me, I'd fractured my spine, hip, rib. Um, there's so many I forget. I'd like dislocated my elbow and fractured coccyx.
Wow.
Um, so I was a mess. And because we were driving overnight and then we were in the middle of nowhere in Ghana, we ended up at a hospital where we had to bang on the doors and turn the lights on.
Oh,
Um, and I ended up having my face sewn up on a metal table in a waiting room, um, and being told we're going to have to give you a blood transfusion. It just feels like this nightmare that didn't really happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Feels like
sounds
it
like a movie.
person. Yeah, exactly. I could honestly, I could write a book. I could
Yeah.
write a book. And spent a week there in hospital having to fight for them to administer me painkillers, fight for them to give me x-rays on things that weren't immediately obvious because it was all a question of insurance and money and who's going to pay for this. And I was just this, yeah, shell of a human being trying to desperately get myself back home to the UK, back to my family, and to get well again. So it was
Yeah.
it was a long recovery. It was a long recovery at home with my parents, where, bless them, I was not fun to be around.
But I'm
Um,
sure they were happy to have you home.
they were chuffed to bits to have me home, but I looked like an entirely different person. And
Mm,
I'm not, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that my face was very obviously disfigured, you could say. I know that term doesn't land well with lots of people,
mm,
but there was a big, angry, open, kind of stitched up wound there. And because it had been done in Ghana, it wasn't necessarily done for aesthetically perfect
yeah.
reasons. There was things that had been done wrong. I still had a severed tendon in my eye, so I had to get another surgery when I got home.
Mm,
And I joke all of the time that they seem to sew half of my eyebrow back in the wrong place. um, so it was a major, major adjustment, and it was looking in the mirror, it was like there was two sides of my face. Things like going to do my makeup again was
yeah.
a really, really tricky experience, having to look myself in the mirror.
Did you feel like, I don't know if you were into makeup before the accident, but did you feel like you had to cover it up?
Yeah, this is the thing with scars. So you can do your best to kind of color match, but actually you're never really going to be able to cover it up. The skin is waxy, it's uneven.
Mm,
Um, so I did my best, but it was always going to have to be something that I would sooner or later need to embrace to
yeah.
some degree. And I was 22, I was in university and getting dolled up, doing my makeup, doing my hair. That was a part of life. And then all of a sudden, it was no longer that fun experience. I had my fringe cut in to try and cover up as
Mm,
much of my scar as possible, which didn't work very well. And I had to go through this whole process of, yeah, finding myself again.
And did you feel like you started to find yourself again the more you got involved in maybe talking about inclusion or at least understanding that this was a thing that you had to talk about and disseminate throughout the world?
I think what I struggled with most was the early days of going out and people staring, or if they weren't staring, I felt like everybody was.
Mm,
And that sense that someone might pity me or think, oh, that poor girl, she must feel awful, she must feel ugly, she must whatever. It was that set me out on the path to trying to cope,
yeah.
and reach out to people that might understand. And I just was a complete control freak about it. I'm a recovering control freak to this day. um, and I was like, right, how can I define this narrative? How can I put a positive stamp on this like horrific traumatic experience? And that was essentially to go out there and prove people wrong and prove to people, no, I can still feel beautiful. I can still feel confident, in myself, and let me stamp a smile on my face and hope that that will be what people will see above
Yeah.
all else. And I'm very grateful and lucky to live in the UK where there are charities support groups available. So I instantly got on Google. Way too soon, I got on Google and reached out to charities and was asking them, what can I do to help? How can I get involved? Let me share my story. Um, and that was cathartic in a way, but also it brought up a whole host of other issues to confront further down the line.
Mm. And this might be a tough question for you to answer. Just, let me know if it's too much. But this whole thing made me wonder, how everybody really, like, a big narrative on social media is about body positivity, or at least body neutrality. And do you, coming from your perspective, do you find that trivial because it is something that you can change? If, most of the time it is something that you can change.
I would say that, so it's well researched in the facial difference space that it's not the size or severity of the facial difference that it is an indicator of the impact that it has on the person. And our bodies, particularly as women, will change throughout our entire lives. And we're going to be constantly confronted with the need to have a positive relationship with that change. And that is heightened by the many pressures that exist out there in the world to look a certain way. And
Yes.
that comparison is the thief of joy
Mm.
quote is so true. Um, so no, I think there might be this assumption that because I'm a face equality activist, that I think appearance is frivolous and that I reject appearance ideals. I don't. I still
Mm.
wear makeup. I still do my hair. I still believe that appearance is a great way to express yourself and your identity and your uniqueness. So learning to celebrate exactly what makes you unique is really important. But I've fully embraced my scar, for example, but at this point in time, for the first time in my life, I've got what appears to be hormonal acne.
Mm.
And I'm having to really like have these words with myself all over again about an appearance affecting condition that I feel is shrouded in stigma and shame, and that I'm having to really build a positive relationship with it. So, no, I don't think anyone's appearance concerns are frivolous. And I think the more that people can understand, as I said, the pressure for us all to look a certain way, the more that actually it makes my job easier to explain the very heightened experience of stigma and discrimination for someone who has that facial difference, whether it's a scar, whether it's a cleft, whether it's a birthmark, particularly when something is on our face and that is the way that we communicate with the world. I wholeheartedly think people should be able to, do whatever they want to do. I don't reject kind of makeup or anything like that.
Mm.
What I do reject is when people are discriminated against and subject to a hate crime, for example, purely because of the way they look, or if they're
Mm.
trolled online because of their weight or their skin color. All of that awful, awful stuff is what I do reject and campaign
Mm.
against.
Do you feel like it might be easier to deal with something like this as we get older versus, being kids? Because kids, we've all sort of experienced to some degree, kids can be mean. So do you find working with different people that being an adult just makes it a bit easier because you might have more tools to deal with it?
100%, you might have more tools and coping mechanisms. I mean, I think this is why social media as a young person is so challenging because you don't have that sense of identity yet, and yet you're putting yourself out there for public opinion before you even really know yourself. And we at Face Equality International, of course, hear all of the time about children being bullied because of the way they look. I've been at a dermatology conference this week and hearing about teenagers living with severe eczema, for example, and the way that they are not only treated by their peers, but by their teachers.
Mm.
And that's only heightened across the world where health education isn't as kind of widespread. So there's all of these myths and superstitions and beliefs around witchcraft, and people are physically hidden away, ending up in orphanages hidden from birth. And it's a massive issue. And I think, yeah, being a child or a teenager with a facial difference in particular, going through school, like you
Mm.
said, kids can be mean, but they can also just be ignorant, and that's fine. I don't have an issue if a child asks me, hey, what happened to your face? Because half the time they're just concerned and they just want to know that you're okay and that you're not in pain. And that's like that inquisitive nature of a child is very innocent. I do think when it's adults, they should know better than for it to be the first thing that comes out of your mouth. But
Yeah.
yes.
It's interesting to hear your perspective, and I would love to hear more about what you're currently doing because I know you did a TEDx talk called I'll Give You Something to Stare At, which I absolutely love the title of. I know you've been doing stuff at Sephora. Like, I want to know more about what you're doing exactly to spread the message because I'm sure a lot of listeners would love to also tune in or maybe attend. Tell me more.
Yes. So at Face Equality International, our core purpose at present is to position face equality as a human rights issue. So, as I'd mentioned about some of the atrocities that go on across the world, people are not adequately protected legally from those human rights abuses. That's first and foremost what we want to do at a policy level, at a United Nations level, to ensure that people are adequately protected and that this very sidelined, marginalized, neglected issue is a priority. Um, Secondary to that is building an empowered community of activists and allies through education and empowerment programs. So we have a whole host of resources that target different communities where people face challenges. So, like I said, schools, but also in the workplace. We have a workplace training program, which is all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that leads us also to partner with businesses and
Hmm.
brands, such as our latest partnership with Sephora UK, which is iconic.
Yeah, I was going
Um,
to say it's amazing. Congratulations. And they're lucky to have you.
yeah, they are known for being a very inclusive brand. And they have another charity partner at the moment, which is all about inclusion of the trans community. So we are working with them in multiple ways. So, representation of people with diverse appearances in ad campaigns is one thing. So, we partnered with them on our Face Equality campaign, which featured a whole host of wonderful people, from people with burns to birthmarks, congenital conditions. Representation is one part of it, but the beauty industry, as we've hit upon, can really perpetuate some of those narrow beauty ideals. And I, amongst pretty much everyone else I know who has a facial difference, has walked into a beauty hall at some point and had that
Mm.
experience where an assumption has been made, whether it's the assumption that they want a really thick foundation to cover
Mm.
something up, or a passive aggressive, well-meaning comment around, oh, well, you must want this, or you've got a cleft, so I won't give you a lipstick or something. Let's not draw attention to that
Mm.
thing. Versus someone might be there to say, well, no, I want to amplify and celebrate what makes me different. So that there's that piece as well, which is around making Sephora and their staff in particular more aware of how to work with someone to really celebrate who they are, to help them use makeup as a tool for expression as opposed to
Mm.
the assumption that people want to cover up. So there's that piece that's involved in it as well. So making sure that Sephora are known to be a safe space for someone with an appearance affecting condition to walk in and have a positive experience. So that's really exciting.
I love that. And I notice you are doing, just getting a lot into CrossFit. I don't know if this is new or, if this has been an ongoing thing, but I wonder how your relationship with yourself has changed through sport because the Discussions podcast, I really like to highlight sports a lot, anything related to wellness, health, fitness, because that's what I do with Growth to Mindset, my consulting firm. So I'd love to just hear what it brings to you and whether it's a positive thing.
CrossFit's definitely a positive thing, and anyone that does it, I don't need to preach about both the community aspect, the strength aspect, and the mental health, physical health, all of that. I think I did not grow up a sporty person. I did not have sporting abilities. I found CrossFit later on in life. Um, if you'd have asked who out of all of my friends growing up, who were all of the netball girls, for example, who would be competitively doing sport as an adult, you would not have said me. But I found it and I instantly felt, like you say, empowered, and just seeing the benefits on my mental well-being, the sense of community, and just constantly proving to myself that I can do hard things, that I
Mm.
am strong, seems to be what attracts lots of people to CrossFit and other endurance sports, either that, it's people with lots of trauma. I don't know what it is that attracts people to it. Maybe just, a bit of masochism, I guess, like being addicted to pain. But it, of course, is a very healthy outlet.
Mm.
Um, and it just keeps me sane and keeps me connected. My CrossFit family, my chosen family, they're a very lovable, highly dysfunctional lot of beautiful humans that I adore.
And that's great. I mean, there's so many studies out there that show how healing movement is for our bodies because we store a lot of trauma in our bodies, and emotions, and it helps us release it, whether it's dancing or walking and I mean, you don't have to do CrossFit to heal. You just found something that brings you a lot of joy as well. And it's just, I wonder, and I'm asking myself this as well, if that aspect of control is there, because when you think about it, with sports, you control your effort. You control, okay, I'm going to do this movement. You're in control of your body. And I wonder if that gives you a sense of control over your life, in a sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as a recovering control freak, but definitely CrossFit feeds that fix of controlling something. Yeah, the structure of it, the sense that there is a trajectory, always honing different skills, getting stronger. 100%, I think the control
Mm,
aspect is definitely an element of it.
I think so too. And what's next for Phyllida? Tell me.
What's next?
Yeah.
In what sense? In the CrossFit sense? In the
And
life sense?
what are you working on right now, whether it's yourself, whether it's your cause? What's next for you?
I fundamentally believe that in order to do my job, I have to keep myself fit and well. And sometimes I have to be selfish and top myself up, and maintaining my energy is really a constant challenge for me. I have a habit of pushing myself to the absolute brink. My brain can just continue put itself under lots of stress, but then it seems to show up in my
Mm,
body, as I said, around, my skin, for example, right now, or I'm nursing a bit of a knee
mm.
slash hip injury. So I think I'm going into a season of a bit more rest. So moving with the seasons here. I don't know whether you get the same seasons there in Miami, but we're coming into autumn here in the UK, and I'm going to be dialing up the yoga and the rest.
Nice.
Um, and then ready to come back fighting fitter and stronger CrossFit wise, with hopefully a few more skills thrown in there. I want to get a muscle up, but
It's coming.
proving rather difficult.
I believe me, it took me 5 years to get a bar muscle up. So, but that doesn't mean it will take you that long. Some people get it much faster. It's just something that, it's high skill, high strength is needed. And you just have to do drill upon drill upon drill. But it's one of those things, as you know, when you you're just up high, on life and
I
physically.
have dreams about being able to do them, which is
Oh,
just like really tragic.
no, it's not. I get you. I think it says a lot about you as a person too. When you think about it, the way people quote unquote attack sports, the way they have sports in their lives, and you wanting to achieve something that is considered very hard, especially for women, I think says a lot about you in the most positive sense. You know, like you want to achieve something hard and you're working hard at it. You're working so hard on it and you want it so bad that it's creeping up in your dreams. You know, and I love that. I really do. And I'd love to end this on one question. And I would like to know, what is it that myself and everyone else can do in order to make people, any person, feel more included? What is it that you've learned that we as a general population can do?
Well, I think seeing people for who they are to their core as opposed to what they look like on the outside.
Mm.
So that encompasses lots of things. And in CrossFit as well, it's interesting. You can make an assumption about someone's strength based on the way that they look. And you might think that someone who's smaller or more slender can't do those kind of higher strength movements. And then you see them on the comp floor and you're like, oh, I need to check my assumptions for a minute there. So yeah, it's not making assumptions about people based on the way they look. Secondary to that is not making comments about people's appearance. I think we sometimes think that people want those sorts of compliments, and actually, I don't think they really help. So getting to know someone and, gassing them up according to who they are and celebrating everything about them that isn't to do with their appearance is
Mm.
definitely a takeaway moment there. And a takeaway for everybody, of course, would be to go and follow Face Equality International. And if you want
Yeah.
to find out more about facial difference and being a face equality ally or activist, then hit us up and follow us.
So what's the Instagram?
Face Equality Int is the handle.
Perfect.
On
INT at the end.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure to follow. Phyllida, thank you so much for just educating us, you know, and talking about something that is so normal yet not talked about enough. And I love the themes that we covered today. I think it goes hand in hand with everyone just letting everyone be and do their thing and just be good humans. And that's it. That's all that counts in the end. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.